It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It wasn't supposed to happen at all. Nathan was the kind of man people admired. The kind of man who made other men feel just a little bit inadequate without ever meaning to. Tall, broad-shouldered, with an effortless confidence that made him seem untouchable. He wasn't the loudest in the room, but when he spoke, people listened. He had this way of making decisions so easily, so quickly, that it felt like the universe itself bent to his will. I used to love that about him. I used to love the way he always knew what to do. When we first met, that certainty made me feel safe, like he was the kind of man who would always protect me, always have the answers. But over time, it began to suffocate me. I started to feel like an accessory in his perfect life. Nathan was meticulous, disciplined. His suits were always pressed, his schedule always planned down to the minute. He never forgot an anniversary, never failed to kiss me goodbye in the morning. And yet, somehow, he never really saw me. I was his wife, his partner. But I wasn't his passion. Maybe that's why I did it. Or maybe I was just selfish. At first, it was harmless. Flirting that didn't mean anything. A little attention from someone who wasn't my husband, a little reminder that I was still desirable, still capable of making a man's breath catch in his throat. I told myself it was nothing. I was still going home to Nathan. I still played my part. But then I crossed the line. And once I did, I couldn't stop. The lies came easily. A late meeting at work. Drinks with a friend. A weekend girls' trip that was anything but. I learned how to delete messages, how to time things perfectly. I was careful. I was sure Nathan would never suspect a thing. But the thing about betrayal is that no matter how careful you are, it always leaves a mark. A scent, a whisper, a shift in energy that can't be ignored. And one evening, as I stepped through the door, the air between us felt different. Nathan was sitting at the kitchen table, his fingers tapping absently against the polished wood. His expression was unreadable, his dark eyes locked onto me with a quiet intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. Something was wrong. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile. "You're home early." He didn't answer right away. He just studied me, his gaze sweeping over me like he was searching for something. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Where were you?" His voice was calm. Too calm. My pulse quickened. I had rehearsed my alibi 100 times, but suddenly, the words felt heavy on my tongue. "Dinner with Olivia," I said, keeping my tone light. "I told you, remember?" A muscle in his jaw twitched. He nodded slowly, eyes still locked onto me. "How was it?" The question caught me off guard. "What?" He tilted his head, almost like he was studying me. "Dinner. With Olivia. Was it good?" I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "Yeah. It was nice." For a long moment, he just sat there, staring at me. And then, finally, he smiled. But something about it made my stomach twist. He stood, pushing his chair back with an easy, controlled motion. He crossed the kitchen, his footsteps slow, deliberate. When he reached me, he leaned in, pressing a kiss to my forehead. His lips were warm, but his touch felt different. "Good," he murmured against my skin. "I'm glad." Then he turned and walked past me, heading upstairs without another word. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Something was wrong. Nathan didn't press. Didn't accuse. Didn't even sound suspicious. But the way he looked at me, the way he lingered just a second too long before kissing me. It was as if he already knew. Or worse, he was waiting for me to realize that he did. I didn't sleep that night. Nathan's kiss lingered on my skin long after he had gone upstairs, his words looping in my mind like a song I couldn't turn off. "Good. I'm glad." I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic sound of his breathing. He had fallen asleep easily. Or at least, that's what he wanted me to think. Every once in a while, he shifted slightly, a little too controlled, a little too measured. As if he was waiting for something. For me to say something? For me to slip? The thought sent a chill down my spine. I had always been careful. Every text deleted, every excuse seamless, every lie laced with just enough truth to be believable. But something was different now. Nathan had never asked questions before. That was what terrified me the most. By the time morning came, I had convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe he really had just been making conversation. Maybe I was reading too much into it because of my own guilt. When I stepped into the kitchen, Nathan was already there. He was standing by the coffee machine, pouring himself a cup, dressed in his usual crisp button-down, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. But something was off. He was never the first one up. Nathan thrived on routine, and his mornings were predictable. Alarm at 6:30, a few minutes of stretching, then a shower. Coffee was always last. And yet, here he was, fully dressed before I had even made it downstairs. "Morning," he said without looking at me, stirring his coffee slowly. I forced a smile. "Morning. You're up early." Couldn't sleep. My fingers tightened around the chair as I pulled it out to sit. Neither could I. "Long night?" he asked casually, taking a slow sip. I hesitated. "What do you mean?" He finally looked at me, his dark eyes unreadable. "You were tossing and turning." I felt my pulse quicken. Had I said something in my sleep? Had I whispered a name? I laughed, a little too quickly. I guess I just had a lot on my mind. Nathan nodded slowly, like he was filing that information away for later. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. My stomach twisted into knots. For a brief, horrifying moment, I was sure he was about to show me something, proof, a message, a photo. But instead, he checked the time. "I have an early meeting," he said, grabbing his keys. "I'll see you tonight." And just like that, he was gone. I sat there, gripping my coffee cup, feeling like I had just survived an interrogation. Something was wrong. Nathan never asked questions he didn't already know the answers to. I tried to push the thoughts away, but they followed me like shadows. By midday, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was ridiculous. I was alone in our house, the same way I had been 100 times before. The blinds were open, the world outside moving as usual. But every time I looked up from my phone, I half expected to see Nathan standing there. Watching. Waiting. I needed air. I grabbed my purse, slipped on my coat, and stepped outside, breathing in the crisp afternoon air. I had no destination in mind, just an overwhelming need to move. I was halfway down the street when my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" A pause. Then, a voice I didn't recognize. "You should be more careful." I stopped walking. My breath hitched. "Who is this?" Silence. My fingers tightened around my phone. "Hello?" Nothing. And then, just before the line went dead, a quiet chuckle. Goosebumps erupted over my arms as I stood frozen on the sidewalk, my heart hammering in my chest. I looked around, scanning the street, the parked cars, the windows of nearby houses. Nothing. No one. But I wasn't imagining it. Someone knew. Someone was watching. I turned around and walked straight home, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking. Nathan's strange questions. The way he had studied me. The phone call. None of this was a coincidence. I needed to find out who knew. And more importantly, I needed to know how much they knew. Before it was too late. The silence in the house felt heavier than usual. Nathan should have been home by now. Dinner sat untouched on the table, the candles I had lit hours ago melting into messy wax puddles. I checked my phone for what felt like the 100th time. Nothing. No missed calls. No messages. It was unlike him. Nathan was always predictable, always steady. If he was going to be late, he let me know. If something changed in his schedule, I was the first to hear about it. A slow, creeping dread settled in my stomach. Finally, just as I was about to call him, my phone vibrated. Nathan, something came up. Leaving on business. Don't wait up. I stared at the screen. That was it? No details, no explanation, no I love you, not even his usual curt see you soon. Just those 6 words. I typed out a response. Where are you going? When will you be back? No reply. Minutes passed. Then hours. And still, nothing. By midnight, I tried calling. It went straight to voicemail. Nathan was gone. I barely slept. The next morning, my bed was still cold on his side. I checked my phone first thing. Still no messages, no missed calls. I told myself he was just busy. That he would walk through the door at any moment with some perfectly logical explanation. But a part of me, the part that had been dreading this moment, knew better. By the afternoon, my anxiety had twisted into something dark and relentless. I called him again. Straight to voicemail. And then, just as I was about to lose my mind, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, my stomach tightening. The last time I had answered a call from an unknown number, I had been warned to be more careful. I took a breath and answered. Hello? A pause. Then, a voice, calm, measured, deliberate. You need to come to 415 Holloway Drive. Now. I gripped the phone tighter. Who is this? Click. The line went dead. I stood frozen, my pulse pounding in my ears. 415 Holloway Drive. The address meant nothing to me. I should have ignored it. I should have called someone, anyone, before getting in my car. But instead, I grabbed my keys and drove. The address led me to an old Victorian house on the outskirts of town. The kind of place that looked like it had 1,000 stories buried in its walls. The paint was chipping, the windows dark, the front porch sagging just slightly. It didn't look abandoned. But it didn't look lived in either. I parked, my hands trembling as I reached for the doorbell. The chime echoed through the house. A few seconds later, the door creaked open. An older woman stood in the doorway, her silver hair pulled into a low bun, her dark eyes sharp and assessing. She wore a simple black dress, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. I opened my mouth to speak, but she beat me to it. You're here. It wasn't a question. I swallowed. I got a call. Someone told me to come here. She studied me for a long moment, then stepped aside. Come in. Something about her presence made me hesitate. She wasn't threatening, but there was something final about her. Still, I stepped inside. The air smelled like old books and faint traces of perfume. The house was neat, immaculate, even, but there were no personal touches. No framed photos, no clutter. Just carefully arranged furniture and dust-free surfaces. She led me to a small sitting room. A single envelope sat on the coffee table. I looked at her. What is this? Her lips pressed together, something almost pitying in her gaze. You already know. My throat went dry. With shaking hands, I picked up the envelope and slid my finger under the seal. Inside was a thick stack of photos. My breath caught in my throat. The first was of me in a dimly lit restaurant, my hand resting on a man's thigh. The next, a parking lot, my body pressed against his, lips inches apart. Then another. And another. Different days. Different places. Every secret moment. Every stolen touch. All of it captured. I could barely breathe. At the bottom of the pile was a set of neatly printed papers. A divorce agreement. And clipped to it, a small handwritten note. It's over. Don't look for me. The words blurred as tears welled in my eyes. I felt the woman watching me. He wanted you to have this, she said gently. He wanted you to understand. I clenched my jaw, my hands gripping the papers so tightly they crumpled. Where is he? She didn't answer. I looked up at her, my vision swimming. Where is Nathan? Her expression didn't change. He's gone. A hollow, sinking feeling swallowed me whole. I had lost him. And the worst part was, I had no one to blame but myself. I sat there, staring at the envelope, my breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The world around me felt blurred, muted, like I was watching my own downfall through fogged glass. Nathan was gone. The words on the note were seared into my mind. It's over. Don't look for me. I wanted to scream, to throw the papers across the room, to deny everything in front of me. But how could I? The proof was in my hands. My betrayal, frozen in time, captured in photos I never even knew had been taken. I forced myself to look up at the older woman, still standing near the doorway, her face unreadable. Where is he? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Her expression didn't change. I told you. He's gone. My pulse pounded in my ears. Gone where? A small, almost imperceptible sigh escaped her lips. Somewhere you won't find him. Panic bloomed in my chest. He can't just disappear. He wouldn't. I reached for my phone, hands trembling, and dialed his number again. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. And again. Nothing. I felt the room closing in on me. Did you do this? Did you help him leave? The woman gave a slow nod. I did what needed to be done. My vision blurred. You don't understand. I just need to talk to him. He doesn't want to talk to you. The bluntness of her words hit me like a slap. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time since stepping into the house, a flicker of emotion crossed her face. Pity. But not sympathy. She sat down across from me, her gaze unwavering. Tell me something, she said, voice quiet but firm. If he were sitting here, right now, what would you say? I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. What would I say? That I was sorry? That I never meant to hurt him? That it wasn't what he thought? Lies. Excuses. Empty words. My hands curled into fists. I don't know. She nodded, like she had expected that answer. Then it's best you let him go. I shook my head, feeling a hot surge of frustration. You're acting like he's dead. She gave me a long look. To you, he is. The finality of those words shattered something inside me. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel, my breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The envelope lay on the passenger seat, its contents spilling out, a mess of damning photographs, a divorce agreement, and that single, crushing note. It's over. Don't look for me. Nathan was gone. And for the first time, I understood that some mistakes don't come with second chances.